All right. Hello, everybody. Thank you for joining us today. We are super, super excited to be here. While people are pouring in, I am going to launch a quick poll to everybody. We want to read the room. We want to get a sense for everybody who is responsible for creating and scaling global content. What has been getting in the way? What's been a complexity for you? Give us your answers here in this poll. Um, and hey, as you're filling out this poll, um, I will give you some housekeeping here real quick, the fun stuff. So we will send the slides and the recording out after this. We always get that question, so I wanted to just address that. And please, during this session, engage in the chat. If you've got thoughts rolling through your head, put them in the chat. We'd love to hear them. But if you have questions that you'd like us to answer at the end of this session, use the Q&A function so we don't miss those throughout. Um, so I see some Smartcat customers here. Thank you for being here. We're excited to see some friendly faces. If you're not familiar with Smartcat, just a quick note on us. We're a global content platform. We manage end-to-end multilingual content workflows for whether it's course creation, enablement content, marketing campaign, and web content all in one place. You can kind of think of it as your one source of truth, where the more content you add, the less rework and edits it requires, because it learns your brand, your approved content, your compliance and requirements in any language you need in many different content formats. Um, so that's who we are. So let's see. Okay, I'll get a couple more results in here. All right, I'm gonna end this poll. Look at our results and then we'll get started. Okay, let's see. All right, so let's read the room here. What factors are adding complexity as you scale content? Let's see. It looks like we're across the board here, but our winners are brand integrity, ensuring that as you scale, the brand and safety and consistency stays on track. Product and feature velocity, staying on pace with the rate at which products are launching is a big one. And then cultural adaptation. And then we've got a few others here. So channel expansion, personalization, compliance, those are big. But yeah, cultural adaptation and brand integrity, those are the big ones. So thank you for sharing that. It's always interesting just to see we can kind of frame the conversation based around that. Awesome. Well, thank you, everybody. Let's get into it here. So, my name's Claire Foster. I'm the director of customer marketing here at Smartcat. Today, we are going to talk about how to scale training and content in general across different languages and across different channels and regions. Um, we're going to talk about how to solve for everything that we just saw in the poll. Like, we're not dealing with just one issue here, we're dealing with many. We're going to start by covering brand new research that just dropped this week on how global enterprises are managing all these different content demands differently, what the highest performing teams are doing differently. And then the real highlight, we'll be hearing from our special guest, Nicole, on how she's put all of this into practice. Nicole is the director of global sales and aftermarket enablement at Cummins. She's going to share her journey about scaling enablement content from 200 languages. What I'm super excited about, everybody, is that this is a story, like, yes, of technology and rolling AI out, but it's also really about inclusion and human connection and how when you put all of that together, that's what drives better performance. And our VP of Product Management, Cisco Guzman, he's going to lead that conversation. So, Nicole, thank you so much for being here. We are thrilled to have you. I think everyone's going to get a lot of value out of what you share with us today. Would you mind sharing a little bit about your background and about Cummins to give everybody a little bit of the lay of the land here?
Of course, and thank you for this time today. So, as Claire mentioned, I'm Nicole Morgan, a leader at Cummins. And for those who may not know us, Cummins is a global power technology company. For more than a century, we've helped customers power the things that people rely on every day, from trucks to construction equipment to power generation. And today we're going to do that while accelerating a more sustainable future. So, my position at Cummins is uniquely placed at the intersection of company strategy and our people. I oversee global sales and aftermarket enablement, where my team is dedicated to developing capabilities across the organization, making sure our sales, service, and operations teams worldwide are equipped with the skills, tools, and confidence they need to succeed. So, my group includes consultants, instructional designers, and strategy leaders, much like many of you. And our main focus is straightforward, which is to build capabilities at scale for a highly global workforce. So that's a little bit about me. Let's move into the next slide presentation.
Perfect. Awesome. Thank you for that context. Yeah, you're dealing with some serious scale here. So I'm excited to get into it. And before we do that, yeah, we will share a little bit of context about what the masses are dealing with when it comes to scaling content, ensuring that when we're trying to reach customers and employees, that we're doing it in the right way, and that we're doing it in a way that serves people, meeting them where they are, when they want it, but doing it in a way that it doesn't blow our budget, doesn't burn our teams out who are actually doing the delivery, right? So my team, we surveyed 200 enablement, L&D, and marketing professionals to figure all this stuff out. And here's what we found. So content demands are 100%, they're rising, right? Like that's no surprise. But in the context of how is it rising from a global standpoint, what we found was interesting in that yes, it's about adding languages, sure. 40% of organizations said that they're adding at least 1 to 2 new languages. Nicole, you're adding much more
Is
than
that right? Yes.
that, right? But the complexity really is about maintaining cultural resonance and compliance, even in your existing markets, and maintaining that in your existing markets, in these responders' existing markets, is taking more effort than we've ever seen. And it's because we need personalized content on more channels. Products are launching faster than ever because product and engineering teams, they're using AI as well. So we need to be able to respond to that. And as we saw in the poll results earlier, that like all of us on this call, myself included, are feeling like none of this can be off brand, none of it can be non-compliant, and none of it for sure can be culturally irrelevant. So it just takes more effort to show up in our existing markets.
Yeah,
Um,
and our engineering and leadership teams and the folks who rely on us do need a level of consistency and cohesiveness, right? So localization is key here in this expansion.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And now, like I noticed that Nicole, you took the survey as well, which is great. You mentioned all of these things were
Mm,
relevant, right? So, and you mentioned, I think one of your angles too was multi-generational workforces and just the need for
right.
like, hey, we can't just put all this stuff out there in the same formats that we used to either.
That's right. Finding different solutions to support that multi-generational gap across cultures is a solution that I've found works, receives better feedback from our group as a whole, and in turn allows us to build that layer of trust and authenticity when working with our teams across the globe.
Yeah, that makes sense. It just shows like, hey, these people actually understand how I want to learn and consume information.
Right.
Yeah. That makes total sense. Yeah, and I think like when it comes to like, oh, not only do I have to deliver this in all these different places, I have to think about the different formats and all that. Like that gets overwhelming, whether it's customers or employees that you're trying to reach. So that's why we wanted to talk to you, Nicole, because in this survey and in this research, we found that 60% of responders they're really only seeing task efficiency when it comes to using AI to deliver their content regionally across regions. Now you have, in your response, you said that you're actually getting a huge high level of ROI out of your AI. Um, and then using AI to deliver content. So, you're scaling, but you're being strategic about the time that you're saving as you're doing that, and like, how do I actually apply that time to be more effective and to ensure that like we're getting ROI out of the time that we're saving, and applying that to more impactful work. So, would love to kind of hear your thoughts on how you've done that.
So what's been the breadwinner here, and I love that you mentioned ROI for the use of AI, is that we haven't had to increase our headcount, but we're able to develop more content. Um, Initially we were doing things very manually. And with that comes time, comes the impact to efficiency to scale, comes the time to increase our ramp up time to our employees and provide the content our teams need to sell our products. But if we use AI to translate our content in several different languages, I know most teams said a couple here. I think we're in the hundreds at this point to make it effective for Cummins is that I'm able to not just support our teams internally, but also our external teams, our JVs, our independent distributors, all to support the Cummins product and the Cummins network through the use of just translating via AI. Someone had mentioned, that there were concerns about how things are culturally nuanced, and I think we'll get into that a little bit later. But I definitely want to come back to that point and that element of how AI has helped my team mitigate some of those concerns. So
Yep, yep. I think that's great. I think that shows true leadership too, showing that, you're not at, you have flat head count. You're not asking them to do more, right? Like we've got enough of that. We're doing enough of that. Like let's
so
rely
much.
on technology instead. Yeah. Awesome. Um, yeah, so that's the big question. Like we want to know what you're doing differently. We want to know what these people in the purple and the pink are doing differently, right? Like that's the million-dollar question. So the last thing that I wanted to share about this research before we kind of go back to the beginning of your story, Nicole, and really get into it is within these 200 people, we kind of figured out who are the top performers. What do they all have in common? Like, what are these people doing differently? How are they able to take what they're doing, share it across all of their regions, and be more effective without adding headcount, without burning their people out, right? And here's what we found. We found that they are 1.6 times more likely to have unified tech stack. So instead of having, all these tools, all these different places, and having to move their files, their content over manually, it's all stitched together. So that's one piece. The second piece is that they were 6.5 times more likely to have significantly faster localization workflows. And usually that means that the localization's happening almost like as you're creating the content, not like, okay, we finished all this work and now we're going to go into this localization phase and it's going to go one by one. It's going to take forever. And then the third thing is that they were 1.7 times more likely to use process level automation over task level automation. So they look at the whole end-to-end workflow of some of their key pieces of work that they're doing, and they look at how can we automate and connect the whole piece rather than like, oh, I've got this one piece here and I'm gonna use ChatGPT. Like that's not the answer, right? The last piece was they were 30% less likely to report governance and compliance review delays. And that does not mean that if their business requires it, that they're not doing it. It means that they're finding ways to remove the unnecessary duplicative work, the work that humans might be doing that they don't need to be doing. So these were the key pieces here, and I think we'll see a lot of that in your approach as well.
Absolutely.
Awesome. Great. Well, we'll share this whole research report with everybody on the call. So look forward to that in the post webinar email that you all receive. And without further ado, let's get into your whole story. Cisco is going to come on and discuss that with you. Thank you so much, everybody.
Thanks, Claire.
Thanks, Claire. And thank you, Nicole, for joining us today. It's great to hear about the trailblazing and the amazing results that you've been getting by implementing AI into your workflow. I want to unpack what you're doing to address this content surge. It sounds like you need to develop content across many languages in as many different formats as you can and ultimately to drive deeper comprehension and performance, right? So the translation itself is just a method for getting there. Can you tell us a little bit more about your workforce demographic and what the reality of training employees in their native languages was like before you started using Smartcat?
Of course, and great to see you again, Cisco. Always lovely to connect with you. So that's a really great question, and Cummins has a deeply global workforce, which I'm super proud to be a part of. We span across regions and languages and cultures, but our training itself actually didn't match that reality. Before utilizing Smartcat, translation was unstructured and often didn't happen at all. We really only supported a couple of different languages: English, Spanish, and French Canadian, especially when Bill 96 was put into law. And globally, just about 10 to 15% of our training content was available in any region. So this wasn't because we didn't care, it's because the time and the cost to make multilingual enablement available felt impossible. It felt impossible to scale. And every decision that we made was a trade off. So we would have a piece of content which was working really well in North America, and then we would have our folks elsewhere throughout the world who could really use that support, but we didn't have it in their native language. And there was concerns about how we would get it to them and develop that level of consistency in our support network without it.
Interesting. Um, so what did your training workflow look like without AI when you did localize content?
So we would do things in a very manual way. It was fully human led traditional agencies that we would work with. And as some of you are probably aware of, that process can be quite expensive, where they charge by word. It's also pretty slow to develop, and it was hard to keep current. So the one thing that I love about AI is that if we translate a piece of content and the content needs to be revised or adjusted, I can translate it immediately that day. Whereas if you use human led, you're looking at weeks to do that. So it's something that you may just change on a PowerPoint presentation. You're like, okay, I need to retranslate this into 10 different languages. The amount of complexity that goes into doing something that small for a revision was enormous. So turnaround times meant we couldn't launch on time, and definitely couldn't update content at a pace the business needed. And if you work in a business like I do, everything was due yesterday, right? People want things right now. We live in a very push button society where the expectation is either right now or before. And more importantly for this, though, Cisco, is that it created exclusion. And when employees can't actually access their training in their language, they disengage, rightfully so. So if you can't understand the value proposition, you can't sell it or feel connected to it. And that can be very complicated, especially in a organization such as mine, where we've got a complexity in our markets and segments and subsegments, where we really need to hone in on the importance of selling the value proposition. So it had a cost impact and a speed impact, but one thing I want to focus on here is that human impact.
Great. I So let me ask you this. Clearly, you believed in the power of AI, and people, our webinar attendees are clearly interested in this. Can you talk a little bit about the journey of what making that change looks like? Like, how did you get buy-in?
So I had this wonderful team who attended one of the ATD conferences and got to meet up with Smartcat at the expo. And they came back to me with this great idea because it was a known issue. It's been a known issue for years, but the tool was introduced to them. The solution was introduced to them at this ATD expo. And if you know anything about me and the way that I work, I love a good pilot. I love a good proof of concept. So, working with the team internally, we developed a proof of concept on what we called our mining value package. So, this was something that we share with our sales team to help them better translate better translate the product value as well as the total cost of ownership and things like that that come with the components itself. But we took that value package that was a massive, massive PowerPoint, and we scaled it against what it would have been done the traditional way, as I mentioned, the human led way, versus what it did or what we could utilize AI for to translate this. And I had the help of James Wilson of your team to get that proof of concept running. And what we found was tremendous. So the results were immediate. There was a 90% cost savings and about a 90%, thank you for sharing that slide, about a 90% faster turnaround. It was insane. Um, and honestly, Cisco, I went to my leadership team. I showed them the data. I showed them what we translated not only into one language, but I think we translated it into three different languages. Where I said, "Listen, we got this done in record time, and we can now distribute this content worldwide." Whereas previous to that, I would have waited weeks, if not months, if not years to get this done. So not only did it please our leadership at the cost effectiveness and the efficiency, but it also supported our troops on the ground, our people on the front line almost immediately. So it was a really, really easy sell. And I'm not a salesperson by any means, but this was an easy sell. And what what we worked through was something that I think if I was to go back and redo it again, I might have done a mining value package plus the pitch wizard that went along with it to show them an immediate holistic result of what we could accomplish with this tool.
That's really powerful. Thank you. Okay, so as as they say, the devil is in the details, right? So
Mm.
you had this belief in the power of AI. You got your stakeholders aligned. Um, but what did you learn during implementation?
So the one thing I want to share with everyone on here listening is that you got to work through AI governance early, but having that proof of concept and that data made those conversations more straightforward. So think about that as you're thinking about a way to implement this into your tech stack. And another thing is it's not a magic wand. It took a lot of work to get here, and you do have to invest time and effort up front. But unlike the agencies that we've used, the investment compounds. So here I am doing a lot of this work up front and working with my internal team and our other key stakeholders within our organization to get this onboarded and delivered in our ecosystem. But if I was working with a human led agency, I'm going to be repeating the same process over and over and over again. Um, to get the same end result. So what I like about this too is that the terminology, the tone, and the style also persist, which is critical uh, in a technical manufacturing business such as ours. So let me explain that a little bit. Cisco is that when I was working with human-led agencies, we have terms like turbocharger, or we have terms that are more technical for someone who isn't in this field to understand. And if I use AI, it learns that. It gets smart enough to know that when I say turbocharger and you're translating that over into French Canadian to find the right terms to have it match or align with that term. So not every time do I have to talk to a human-led person and explain that term again. I hope I'm explaining that right for everyone to maybe capture that. But one thing to also mention here is that we don't totally remove humans from the process. I think that's a key thing to mention here because using AI totally does, it is intimidating as it stands, but we don't remove the total human component of that. We just reposition them. So rather than fully focusing on a human led solution, we use human review, but now edits are captured permanently, reducing the work over time. And I'll point out James here on the call as one of the Smartcat team members to really walk us through how to use human review within Smartcat too. And really going back to the cost and the time efficiency here, the waiting is real. Backlogs only grow, and AI helped us from continuously falling behind. I know I've got a couple of team members who have joined us today, and they're probably shaking their heads, going, "Yes, we're finally able to tackle our backlog using AI." So it's been realistic, it's been credible and scalable through the use of SmartCat. And I don't think I would change anything that I've done thus far today with the tool and the implementation.
That's fantastic. That's great to hear. Um, so fast forward to today, what's changed now that you've scaled and you've deployed a full learning workflow?
Totally. So the pace is totally different. It does take some time to put content into the tool and then make any sort of adjustments to the layout, but it's a significant impact on the pace and the availability to deliver. What used to take months and years now takes about, weeks to days sometimes. We're clearing backlogs, expanding language availability. We focused on the core, what we would consider our core languages up front, which was Spanish, Brazilian Portuguese. We had German, French, French Canadian, but now we're looking at Mongolian, Russian, some Cantonese, all of these other languages that we never even expected to touch, but now we're able to reach those regions. More importantly, though, I think what this is allowing us to do, Cisco, is as we're expanding our language availability, we're becoming a better business partner to our organization and a business partner that can say yes to them. So as I mentioned, we're a global company. We've got 8 regions across the globe, and some of them I haven't even touched point with before we implemented the use of AI because I didn't have anything to provide them up front. So the conversations would fall flat. We would talk about, what we're offering in North America, and that was all well, but it didn't really provide them any value. So to me that brings a lot of the value to the table, and it's the savings that we enable through the use of AI that also supports the overall business execution there. And now with AI review agents layered in, as I just mentioned previously, we're scaling quality, compliance, and cultural relevance even further. So the AI agents that is built into the SmartCat tool actually helps us to not leverage internal support too. And that was something that was part of that human led comparison, is that we would translate something into a local language and then ask one of our internal employees who spoke that local language to verify. Now, these people have full-time jobs. They may or may not have the capacity or the bandwidth to support what we needed. So that would also add to the timeline. And in addition, it was always kind of like that awkward, hey, do you mind taking a look at this? But now with the AI review agents that we have in SmartCat, all I got to do is select a button and then hit send, and I know it's being reviewed by someone who is fluent in that language and understands cultural relevance.
This is really powerful. I would love to comment on this concept for a moment. Whether you're in enablement, learning and development, or marketing, we're all used to saying no. And
Mhm.
essentially, what you're talking about is the ability to say yes more often to things, which is really powerful. The time and cost savings that you talked about earlier are amazing, but this is the real benefit, right? When what the savings enable you to accomplish and point your energy toward. it really seems that you've figured out how to use AI to become a powerful resource for your entire organization.
Yep.
So, for those that are listening who are familiar with Smartcat or curious about it, we're actually rolling out new AI content review agents that are custom configured to review translations for quality, compliance, cultural resonance, SEO optimization, and so on. So, much like you were saying, you get clear feedback in real time so that by the time content gets to a human reviewer, they're spending even less time on reviews and edits than what existing translation memories already catch. So you're able to really scale costs as your content grows and helping you to offset those, linguistic review costs. So I just wanted to really underscore that point, Nicole. Thank you so much.
Absolutely.
Switching gears here a little bit, what has changed for employees now that training is available in their own language?
Sure. And I'm going to be a little vulnerable here. As a leader, my foundation is my ability to support and care for my team. And I have spent years looking at resources, taking training, getting mentors to help me become a better leader. And at the center of it all, it's the way that we treat people. So, training in a learner's native language truly does drive engagement and confidence and inclusion. And when we don't, I see it as an equity issue. If it's not in their language for them, it's not fair. Perhaps they do speak English. Okay, that's great, but it's not technically their first language. And I want to be able to provide that to them to show that sense of care, that sense of support. I'm in a learning and development role where as the director of a global role, I need to be totally inclusive of what I'm doing and think about not just what we have here in North America, but what we can provide across our 170 plus countries that we support. So really, Cisco, better enablement reduces that frustration. It helps to build that trust. And over time, it's going to improve employee retention, which is what I love to see. And I know my HR folks on the call love to see as well.
Amazing. How does this connect to revenue, right? The perennial question, or to frontline customer outcomes?
Yes, that's where it matters, right? Our bottom line there. So sales and service teams need enablement they fully understand to represent the brand well. They need to be able to build the confidence in order to work with our customers, build that brand loyalty and that customer loyalty as well. And once training is available in every representative's language, confidence and performance can and have increased. And that shows up directly in customer outcomes. Now, as someone who is in an enablement role, I cannot directly relate my impact to direct revenue, but I can say that there's no doubt in my mind that when we provide enablement to our teams in all languages, that they are getting a value add to their roles and being able to deliver outcomes and even succeed their original goals.
Fantastic. Okay, so we're starting to wind down the
Sure.
questions here. So I want to just maybe wrap up with one or two last questions.
Okay.
What advice would you give to peers trying to scale global enablement with AI?
Start with that proof of concept. Compare the old versus the new. I mean, that is really what won this for me, everyone. I was able to show my executive leadership team, old and new, here's where we can go. Here's where we started, here's where we can go. And that was an easy win. Design human AI workflows intentionally and understand that AI scales speed and cost, but humans ensure trust and relevance. So, again, Smartcat's got all these great tools that are helping to increase that. However, if you're talking to someone in your C-suite or someone on your executive leadership team, don't just take humans out of the equation. Let them know that AI is a tool and you are going to make sure that you have a plan to ensure that it is going to be able to resonate with your teams and that the content that has been translated is true. So, also have a plan for the time and the money that you save. So show them, hey, listen, here's all the budget that I saved from this year's AOP because I've used AI to translate our content, and then say this is what we can do with it instead. And maybe that's something in skilling, maybe that's something in a planned project that you've had sitting by the wayside because you haven't been able to have the budget for it. And then finally, communicate internally. When people see what's possible, adoption accelerates. When you don't talk about these things, if you don't bring them up in a meeting, or if you don't perhaps just make an initiative circulating around something like localization, it won't happen. And the worst thing that could come about that is you start where, or you go back to where you started, right? So you go back to where nothing has changed. So I would encourage you to find that find that confidence and make a change within your organization, because we have here at Cummins, it is a ripple effect to our entire organization. So it's not just for me, it's not just for my wonderful team that helps to drive this work forward. It is for our entire organization, and it's only going to have a positive impact for years to come.
Nicole, it's been a real pleasure talking to you this morning. Thank you so much. I
Yeah.
learned a lot. If you leave the audience with one message, what would that be?
So this isn't about technology. Again, it's about the people. I'm going to harp on that because that's just who I am as an individual. To me, global enablement means meeting learners where they are and in their language. So we can't just push that to the back. And today we really don't have an excuse anymore. If you own global content, you now have the tools to ensure that everyone can truly understand your message. So again, I empower you to have those conversations with your leadership team and consider utilizing AI and Smartcat. Thank you.
Nicole, thank you so much for joining us this morning. I know I got a lot out of the conversation. It's always great to connect with you, and it was really inspiring to hear about the journey that you and Cummins have gone through. So thank you again, and I will hand it back to Claire.
Awesome. Thank you so much. That was a great conversation. And we got a lot of questions, which is always a good sign. Yeah, why don't we kind of do one that transitions from what you were just talking about, which is really we had a couple that kind of fell under one theme, Nicole, which was a little bit about kind of how you strike that balance of having one core set of content that then gets localized to, like, you've
Yeah.
got multiple hundreds of different languages. Like, how do you go about keeping things consistent to some extent, but then having that level of, resonance within each region? And I know you've got the marketplace translators that you use to some extent, but talk to us a little bit about how you add that level of cultural relevance at the end of the process.
So to do that, you got to ensure that you talk to, again, we've got the translators that we work with, but we actually have SMEs or subject matter experts that vet our content before releasing it out to the masses. Um, so they go in and they look at, and I love this, and if I can call this out too. So Stephen Schwab put in here, like, what type of media are you referring to? And that's a really good question. So I'll combine those together. So as an example, say we created something in Articulate, which is an e-learning solution. We would have that translated into Smartcat or utilizing Smartcat, which there is a expansion for that, FYI. If that'll sell anybody, there's an expansion that goes with that. Um, but we would translate that content, have a SME from that region, subject matter expert from that region, review the content and ensure its relevancy. So again, that's where you can't really take the human totally out of it because I'm not going to be able to tell you 100% if this translates appropriately in India. So I would rely on the country itself. And I want to mention here too, so it says written documents, web content. What we translate the most is a lot of e-learning SCORM file solutions, but you can do video, you can do images. There are other, like I think I mentioned PowerPoints earlier. I mean, it's kind of endless in what I've seen thus far in the work that
Yeah.
we do.
Absolutely. About 80 different file types for sure. Yes, that's correct. Also, software applications. So yes, we did receive that question. That's a great one. And we also did receive a question about whether we work with Articulate or not, which is, the main area that you're working in. So,
Mhm.
okay. Great question. Yeah, and then just to chime in from an efficiency and technology standpoint as well, those every time that subject matter expert in India makes an edit to the content in Smartcat, Smartcat will remember that edit. And if it sees content that is an exact or fuzzy match to that again, it's going to tell that translator, that linguist, like, hey, we've already looked at this content. Like, you don't need to spend time editing this because we've already done that. We've seen this before. You can skip past this if you want to. And those are some of the ways in which the efficiency and the time saved, especially when you're creating a lot of content that looks and feels very similar over and over again. It just might have a little bit of a different flavor. That's when you really start to see the efficiency stack up. Um, okay, great question, great answer. Some other things that were asked about as well was how can you make content? And I love this question because it really doesn't even have to do anything with SmartCat, which like bring those questions on too. You've got like a enablement pro here in front of you all. How can we make training content, even when it includes video, feel more human and more engaging?
Mixed modalities is the way that we approach that today. So not just one or not just the other, but finding a mixed modality set. And what I mean by that is what I've learned in my years in learning and development is that in order to keep someone engaged and have them remain engaged, us as adults, adult learners, if we're speaking to that specifically, we have to be entertained. So you may have one particular subject that you want to train on. And what I would invite you to do is find the elements of that subject that can be delivered or in an e-learning and then find the elements of that can be delivered, say, through a face-to-face facilitation, or through a webinar such as this, or through a simple readout. You mix things up, make it a melting pot of learning, if you will. What really engages our audience is the ability to practice too. So ensure that you're doing that, and that way you can really make that learning stick. But yeah, for me, Claire, it's all about taking everything that you've got to make one perfect recipe for that particular subject.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Okay. Yeah, that's a good one. Um, okay. And as a marketer myself, that I feel like the same rules apply, right?
Keep it fun. I mean, that's all I get. It's just like keep it fun. We don't want we read enough emails. We do enough very kind of not exciting things all throughout the day, especially if you're like me in strategy. So just keep it fun and remember that, part of learning is a journey. So don't feel like you've got to give your learners everything at once and that they're going to digest it because this is something that has to be compounded over time, kind of like this AI tool, right? It's got to learn and then it keeps learning and then it keeps getting better. It's the same concept.
Yeah, no, it totally is. And the authenticity piece too, like, in marketing, we like to call it lo-fi content.
There
Like
you go.
not everything even has to be perfectly polished. Like it can be human, it can be on the cuff. Um, so perfect. Okay, so that's a great answer. Let's see. We received another one. Do you have like a hard and fast rule, Nicole, and maybe this is a little too black and white, so a gray area answer is totally fine. But when you go from region to region, do you have, say, like an 80/20 rule when it comes to customization? Like how customized does the content tend to become?
And that's pretty easy for me to answer. The answer to that is yes. Ideally, we want, especially when it comes to customer support and what we train on and when we enable folks to do, we want there to be a certain level of consistency and cohesiveness in the contents. So that way, when they reiterate it externally, they're able to follow that. However, I understand that the way that we operate here in Charleston, South Carolina at our branch here is not going to be the same way that they operate in our Johannesburg, South Africa facility. There are different people. There are different, the ways that the buildings look are different. So I have to expect that certain level of nuance. So I'd say 80/20 is a pretty hard and fast rule for that.
Yeah, yeah. I think that's again flexibility, learning. That all makes sense. Um, okay, and we received a question on video, which I can speak to this one just in terms of, and if you have something you want to share too, Nicole, feel free, but how to make video and voiceover feel less robotic. It can be kind of hard to understand. Yeah, I totally hear that. And I think that's one of those challenges that's like scale, you know what I mean? Like going fast versus taking more time and it feeling more natural. And it's one of those things where like these things get better over time and they will continue to get better. Some things like specifically that can be looked at are using your own voice and then loading that into Smartcat. That's a possibility. So that would be an option. I would recommend that honestly, trying that out. But I can take that one too and see if there are other options for the person who asked that question. But Nicole, I don't know if you have any other thoughts for making
It
content in
varies.
general feel
Yeah,
more.
I mean, it's going to vary on the tool and the capability of that tool specifically. So I'm right there with you.
Yeah, 100%. I think we may have gotten to all of our questions. Let me just double check before we end things here. Yeah, amazing.
I'm
Great.
reading one last one just to make sure. So suggested blended learning, some topics might be better supported with more than just e-learning. Yes, that's correct. I'm suggesting that blended learning approach when I was talking about mixed modalities. That's where you want to aim to achieve the highest level of learning retention is by having that blended learning approach. Now, some people will argue that being in front of others is what's going to capture that retention. However, studies have shown, and you can look this up on, yeah, peer-reviewed articles. You can look this up in Gartner, any other resources, ATD, that it's not about the lecture part of it as much as it is about the lab, so the practice element. And I would empower and encourage you all and do your research or connect with me. I love these conversations. So
Awesome. And I'm sorry, let me check the chat one more time to see. Some of these questions are specific to the
yeah,
platform, and we will take them and have our team individually get back to everybody specifically on technical questions. So don't worry about that. We will get back to you on those. And then let me just, yeah. Okay. Oh, here's one more I think that you might have some good perspective on that's not necessarily specifically technical to Smartcat, but like kind of logistically important. How do you make a vast number of media types available to your workforce? I think the logistics about this stuff is like equally as important as the strategy.
I won't mention a specific organization, but you have to have an LMS that can support learning management system that can support both, well, all sorts of media file types. So on the learning side, and then you need something that can also host content. What I've experienced is people don't, I mean, they want a solution, right? They don't want 100 different places that they need to go to find one answer. So getting really smart and really keen about the solution that you use, the LMS that you use, the CRM, whatever those things may be, make sure that you're staying on top of your game and understanding what organizations, what companies have to offer today as far as their capabilities amongst competitors. So I won't shout out to my favorites here on this, but again, I actually posted in the chat feature for you all my LinkedIn account if you want to connect after.
Thank you so much for making yourself available today and beyond to everybody. This has been a great session, Nicole. And thank you to everybody for attending. We really appreciate your time. We'll send this recording out, we'll send the report that we shared out. Thank you so much, everyone, and have a great day.
Thank you, everyone.
Bye.